Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dig into a timeless classic, Peter Drucker's The Effective Executive. And look, this isn't just another management book. It's about a really fundamental idea, how to stop just being busy and start, actually being effective.
So let's just kick things off with that question. Think about it for a second. Are you busy or are you effective? It sounds simple, right? But what Drucker pointed out is that most of us, especially in today's work culture, get this totally backward. We confuse activity with achievement. And, well, this explainer, it's going to be the antidote to that.
Okay, first things first, let's bust a major myth. When you hear the word executive, you're probably thinking of someone in the C-suite, right? A CEO, a CFO. But for Drucker, that's not it at all. His definition is so much broader. It's really anyone whose work makes a real, tangible difference to the organization's performance and its results. So yeah, that means you. Think about it. If you have even a little bit of control over how you spend your day to get things done, doesn't matter if you're a writer, an engineer, a project manager, whatever, then by this definition, you're an executive. So this explainer, it's absolutely for you. And here's what might be the most liberating, most powerful idea in the whole book. Effectiveness? It's not some talent you're born with. It's not a gift. In fact, Drucker said that in all his decades of consulting, he never, ever met a natural, effective executive. Instead, it's a learned skill. It's a discipline. It's a bunch of habits that you have to practice over and over until they just become second nature. All right, so where do you even begin to learn this discipline? Well, it starts with the one resource that is totally finite, the one thing you can never, ever get back, your time. Now, here's where it gets a little counterintuitive. Most of us, when we think about managing time, we jump straight to making a plan, right? To-do lists, calendars. Drucker says, nope, that's wrong. You start by tracking. For a couple of weeks, you just log where your time is actually going. Once you have that real data, then you can start managing it. You cut out the stuff that's wasting your time, and you group what's left into big, uninterrupted chunks for real deep work. It's that old saying, right? You can't manage what you don't measure. Okay, let's say you've done that. You've found these golden, focused blocks of time. You've cleared the decks. Now what? The big question becomes, what should you actually do with that precious time to make a real, meaningful impact? And the answer? Well, it requires a pretty big shift in how you think. You have to stop asking, what are my tasks for today? And you start asking a very different question. What can I contribute? See, that one word, contribution, it forces you to look up from your own little world, your own to-do list, and think about the bigger picture. How can you affect the results of the whole team, the whole company? But how do you even know what your best contribution could be? That's where the next practice comes in. You don't find it by looking at your tasks. You find it by looking at your strengths. Drucker's view on this is, well, it's pretty brutal, but it's also brilliant. He says that trying to be this well-rounded person is just a recipe for mediocrity. The goal isn't to fix your weaknesses, no. The goal is to pour all your energy into your strengths, to make them so productive that your weaknesses become totally irrelevant. You staff for what people can do, not what they can't. And there's a fantastic historical example of this. Think about Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. He was just burning through generals, one after another. They all looked good on paper, but they couldn't win battles. And then came Ulysses S. Grant. Now, Grant was deeply flawed. He had a pretty famous drinking problem, but he had one massive, undeniable strength. The man could fight, and he could win. So, naturally, people complained to Lincoln about Grant's drinking. And Lincoln's response? It's just legendary. He basically said that if he knew what brand of whiskey Grant drank, he'd send a barrel of it to all his other generals. See? He made a choice. He focused on the one thing that mattered, strength. He understood that a leader's job is to make people's strengths productive, and their weaknesses, well, beside the point. All right, so we're managing our time, we're playing to our strengths, but Drucker said there's a secret sauce, if you will, that holds it all together, and that's the incredible power of concentration. And this quote just says it all. First things first, second things,
Not at all. It perfectly captures the kind of ruthless focus that's required. Truly effective people, they do one thing at a time. They tackle the most important thing first and they see it through to completion. Everything else, it's just noise, a distraction. But here's the thing, to really focus on first things, just making a priority list isn't enough. You also have to set what Drucker called posteriorities. And that's just a great word, isn't it? A posteriority is a task you decide to actively abandon. I'm not talking about postponing it or putting it on the back burner. I mean dropping it, systematically, for good. So how much of your work could you just stop doing? Drucker had a pretty shocking estimate. He figured that about a quarter, 25% of the demands on an executive's time could just be thrown in the trash and literally nobody would even notice. I mean, just let that sink in for a sec. Okay, so you're managing your time. You're focusing on contribution through your strengths. You're concentrating on one thing at a time. All of this, it builds up to the final capstone practice, making effective decisions. And the key here isn't to make lots of decisions. It's to make the few big decisions and to make them right. You see, an effective decision isn't just a lucky guess or a gut feeling. It's a systematic process. You have to figure out if the problem is generic or one of a kind. You have to define the boundary conditions, what the solution absolutely must achieve. And then, and this is so important, you have to actively look for disagreement. You need conflicting opinions to really test the decision. Only then do you commit to action and build in a way to check on the results later. There's a great story that shows this whole process in action. It's from the massive 1965 power blackout in New York City. The New York Times was scrambling, trying to be the only paper to actually publish the next day. They're running on backup generators, things are chaotic, and suddenly production grinds to a total halt for almost an hour. And why? Because a bunch of editors were arguing over a single hyphen. I know, it sounds completely insane, right? They lost a ton of money in sales because of that delay. But here's the twist. It was actually an effective decision. Why? Because you have to look at their boundary conditions. For the New York Times, the goal wasn't just print a newspaper. The non-negotiable goal was uphold our identity as the gold standard for grammar and accuracy in America. When you measure it against that goal, then taking the time to get the hyphen right was the correct call. And all of this really brings us to the most important question of all. It's the question Peter Drucker himself would supposedly end his consulting gigs with, to push his clients from just listening to actually doing. So ask you the same thing. After everything we've talked about, what are you going to do on Monday that's different? Because ultimately, that's the whole point. Effectiveness isn't about being brilliant or charismatic or just busy. It's a discipline. It's a set of simple, powerful habits that anyone can learn and start practicing. You can start today, and you can finally start getting the right things done.